When I first start talking about attitudes and I define them, there's a readiness to respond. An example to that has to be. And define an environmentalist like I have a pro environment. You might think that I'm more likely to engage in a recycling program, so that general attitudes and rhythms will be able to predict a specific behavior of a human being and sometimes run into a problem in this tango. This entanglement also, and this could be a problem in our conversation, not understanding the statements and the expressed data attitudes and the subsequent dependence, that perfect and a high standard, almost never achieving that, the correlation or the link between the stated attitudes and the subsequent behaviors might be weaker than you expect, and much of this research begins in the 30s after a lit Richard Dapelier traveled the country of the United States with a Chinese couple. They spent several months during in a variety of places like hotels and restaurants and campgrounds, all kinds of places. And the whole idea was that Lapierre wanted to see if people would serve. The Asian couple that he was with at that time in our country was quite an anti sentiment, and there was prejudice against them. And Lapierre, he wanted to see would those attitudes influence and change the behaviors of the storekeepers, clerks, or the people running the hotels and people serving music at the Brat album. There's a lot of anti-sentiment in the sand, refusing service through a couple of months in the United States. The stuff gets interesting because after this trip, Lapierre sent a survey to all of the places that he's visited and simply asking, would their business be willing to serve and serve? All the businesses that responded, 90% of them said they would not consider this thought. So the entire thing was based on this one time when he said that he would not respond to the serving um, um, so it got me thinking if this was really evidence for a little correspondence between the two of them, between the person's stated attitude and actual behavior. I knew that that's too far in, and that study was seriously flawed. In a series of couple of perspectives, I don't even know if the people who replied to this survey, they served the survey, a survey the certainly they know hotels and campgrounds, those ones, and with Richard Lapierre, who was not Asian. So let's get past that for a second. The bottom of this is let's get to it. The story, it's good. It's created in a lot of research. A lot of people wanted to explore this link and the nature of the link between people's expressed attitudes and their actual behaviors. So, throughout the years, there's been a lot of research. And the good news is that the subsequent meta analysis of similar studies are getting a better sense of figuring out what's really going on, and these attitudes are doing deeds and significantly raising the awareness under certain conditions, and those conditions are what everybody wants to talk about. We want to keep this in mind, this attitude of just one factoring the determining behavior, and the theory of plant behavior helping to put that basic point into contact. So it's helpful as long as we stay positive about the learned behaviors and theories of plant behavior. So a diagram would help with a few key concepts. First of all, of course, the importance to think about the person's attitude, because the person's attitude towards a behavior is going to contribute to their intention to engage in that behavior. But the other factors are also considered the objective norms, the person's perceived control over the room, and the behaviors of the personas in it. So I'm going to talk about these factors and behaviors most influenced by how strong and how specific a person's attitude is. In a class, an example, general attitude where we learn that someone is very pro environmental, and a general attitude like that does not predict specific behaviors, like their likelihood of engaging in a curbside recursive. So, however, that's the attitude of the bottom engaging curbside program, trained on a lot of data that will predict their behavior to engage in that very specific activity. Tea ceremony? Let's make that a little more clear. As a charitable person, I don't give to just any charity. I oftentimes TV Oftentimes I news, oftentimes I phone. Horrible incidents that happen overseas, I will see them and I'll react. People living on the streets saying things being horrible, and if people get caught off guard and they never donate in every situations. My general attitude about this is I see a very charitable person, that's a good thing. Does not predict my behavior whatsoever for giving in the circumstance. But if I look at more specific attitudes about charity, I see a little more of a link because I like my dollars to shine. I have to iron them and trim the community, do grass. Absolutely, I do. And in this situation, there is much more of a correspondence between my specific needs and attitudes and my not so specific local charities that don't provide a lot of information and just request more money into their bank accounts. But we want those specific attitudes to predict the specific behaviors. And my attitude about this charity isn't the only factor that's influencing my intention to give charities.